So yeah, I actually went into one of the real estate meetings one night, and Lex was talking about his program and his boot camp, and he was telling the story of how he got his houses. And it just seemed like he laid it out step by step, and he made it so easy. I said, you know, I could do this. And so I signed up for his boot camp and read the home study course, and it really is something that works. In that boot camp, we went and we saw a house that actually, it wasn't a bad house. It just had kind of a weird, we didn't know why, but they had raised the living room floor up about 6 inches for no apparent reason. And I've now owned the house for about 5 years, and I still haven't figured out why they did that. But one of Lex's students had it. I didn't buy it at the boot camp. A couple months later, and I was still thinking, you know, I've got to get a house. And Lex called me and said, "Come look at this thing." And I went, "Oh wow, that's the one I saw." So it was at the time $54,500 for a 3-1 CBS construction that really didn't need a lot of work. And I didn't know where I was going to get the money, but my ex-wife has done pretty well. And I said, "Listen, I got a deal." So she said, "Well, let's go for it." So we ended up buying the house.
Isn't that impressive? Hitting up the ex-wife, pretty impressive.
Let's stop giving you a hand.
So anyhow, that was the first house I got. And while I was rehabbing it, it didn't take too much. It took about $8,000. But while I was rehabbing, one of the women in the neighborhood came over and said, "I want that house." And so the funny thing about the house is it still had the chicken coop up in the back and the bunny hutch. And she goes, "No, I want it. So I said, "Okay." And she was a Section 8 tenant, and she's still in there. She's been the greatest tenant in the world. In the meantime, she pays $1,200 a month on a $54,000 investment. So it's very nice, and most of that comes through Section 8. Then all of a sudden I got a call from Lex another day, and he said, "I want you to come see this house." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, that's right next door to the house I have. It's the exact same house." At that point, it was about $63,000 because it had been about a year and prices had gone up. So I went over to it, and he said, "Mike, if you don't buy this one, what are you going to buy?" So I bought the house next door.
You were a little hesitant.
I was very hesitant. I hadn't spent that much for a house. I wasn't sure if the ex-wife wanted to go in on it again. But again, she said, "Let's do it." So we bought that house, and immediately the next door neighbor had an aunt she wanted to rent. And the aunt couldn't quite handle it. She went for about a year, and then she said, you know, she let the lease go. And so the woman next door brings her mother in. Now I've got to go over this afternoon and sign the 3rd year of her mother's lease. We have to get that settled because the mother is also a Section 8 resident, and she's been there 3 years, and it's getting good rent. I get about $1,200 on that one as well. Most of it being paid by Section 8. Then my daughter had about a year off from the time she graduated from college to where she's now in med school. And so I said, you know, you should take this boot camp, and you should also get your real estate license, something I haven't done yet. And so she did. And of course, Lex's phrase, "smells like money." What's her phrase?
The smell of money.
The smell of money. Anyhow, Lex texts me and says, "Hey, get over to this house. I think it will be a good one for you." And it was in the 33064 area, which is right around Lighthouse Point in Pompano. And I couldn't get there because I was working. So I sent my daughter over, and she immediately texts me, "Smells like money." This house was pretty much a wreck. But we got it for about $65. We put about $20 into it, and we're now renting that for $1,300 a month. And the tenants are great, except they don't speak a word of English. And since Pompano has now decided to inspect all the houses, I had to ask someone from Pompano to get somebody who spoke Spanish to explain to them that they had to do an inspection. But Pompano complied, and they're going to inspect next week. Then I went to another boot camp, and we're driving around, and we went just in an area.
This is on the bus trip, like you guys did yesterday.
Yeah, it's a little south of my target area, but it's within about a mile, so I wasn't too afraid of it. And
wasn't your first house from the bus trip?
Yes, the first house was on the bus trip, but I didn't buy on the bus trip. I bought a little bit later. This one, I saw it. It needed nothing. It was just ready to go condition. It was for $85,000, and I jumped on it. I was able to rent it it's rented for $1,150, and actually 3 air conditioners later, because it took about a month to rent, and they kept stealing my air conditioners. But that's now rented. It's got a family in it, and so that was the 4th house. Now I'm looking for the next one because it really has been good. What you might be dealing with right now is whether or not your investment in the boot or in Lex's mentoring will pay off. Let me tell you, my equity, I actually did it last night. I calculated my equity in the houses, and I now have over $200,000 of equity that I never had. So yes, if you take action and if you actually apply what Lex teaches you, you're going to make money, and it's not that difficult to do. It's really more simple than you can imagine. Sometimes you get a pain in the neck tenant. Sometimes things break, and you got to figure out who's going to go fix it. But really, it's not that hard. Now, I haven't wholesaled anything yet. I intend to. My ex-wife likes to hold them, so we're rent and holders, and we don't flip. Although my daughter's dying to flip one, so we'll see how that goes in the future. But I'm looking for another rental right now in my target area, and I'm very comfortable in that area because now I know what the comps are. I don't have to go to Cytex every time and calculate it. I know what's a good deal and what's not. So, and Lex, in addition to being a great real estate mentor, has always been a good career mentor for me. Before I had my last job, I went to Lex and he said, "Hey, don't throw a number at them. Let them come to you." And it turns out they offered me $45,000 more per year than what I was going to ask for. So Lex has become a close friend, a great mentor, and a very profitable addition to my life.
Thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate it. Guys, I'm sure some of you have questions for Mike. So he's now got 4 rentals, rented out, anywhere from $1,150 to $1,300, and he's got about $200,000 in equity from when he bought that first house on the bus trip. And if any of you have questions, in fact, I didn't bring it in, but the Sun Sentinel staff writer called me and he wanted to know if I had any landlord students that have bought and held. And they came and did a piece on Michael, and there's actually a full-size picture. It's in my office of Michael and the Sun Sentinel talking about landlording. So if anyone has any questions for Michael, go ahead and ask.